Today is International Women's Day, a day set aside by the United Nations to amplify voices on issues that have to do with women globally. The theme for this year is Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. Nigerian women have over time played critical roles in the public space and, of course, the private space, shaping our everyday lives. Little wonder in this special edition of the program, we are speaking with one who has played vital roles and is still playing in both sides of the divide. My name is Leah Katung-Babatunde and I'm welcoming you to this special edition. Don't forget the program is streaming on YouTube at Saban Media Services, and also we have our complimentary segment Simplify Days and Markets. We start the show with a look at a trend table.
Cryptocurrency exchange Binance has announced plans to discontinue all services related to the Naira. The action follows accusations by authorities that include exploiting the Naira, leading to its free fall in value, terrorism financing, money laundering, and tax evasion. Binance, a cryptocurrency exchange platform, in a statement advised users to either withdraw their Naira, trade their Naira assets, or convert their local currency into crypto by today. Nigeria is one of the largest peer-to-peer crypto markets in the world, trading in billions of dollars. The Bank of Ghana has suspended the foreign exchange FS trading licenses of Guarantee Trust Bank (GTB) and the First Bank of Nigeria (FBN) over fraudulent documentation during operations. The Ghanaian Apex Bank, in a statement, said the suspension, which will take effect from March 18, 2024, is for an initial 1 month once it is satisfied that they have put in place effective controls to ensure strict adherence to regulations to the foreign exchange market. The regulator urged foreign exchange market players to adhere strictly to the applicable regulations and guidelines. An International Monetary Fund team led by Axel Shimofenik, IMF Mission Chief for Nigeria, visited Lagos and Abuja February 12 to 23, 2024 to hold discussions for the 2024 Article 4 consultation with Nigeria and met with Minister of Finance Wale Edun, Central Bank of Nigeria Governor Layami Kadoso, senior government and central bank officials, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of the Environment, as well as representatives from sub-nationals, private sector and civil society. At the end of the visit, Mr. Axel Shimofenik observed that the Nigeria's economy outlook is challenging. Economic growth strengthened in the fourth quarter, with GDP growth reaching 2.8% in 2023, falling slightly short of population growth dynamics. With about 8% of Nigerians deemed food insecure, addressing rising food insecurity is the immediate policy priority. The team welcomed the Monetary Policy Committee (MPC's) decisions to further tighten monetary policy. The global gender gap for women in the workplace is far wider than previously thought. A groundbreaking new World Bank Group report shows as the world marks International Women's Day. When legal differences involving violence and childcare are taken into account, women enjoy fewer than 2/3 the rights of men. No country provides equal opportunity for women, not even the wealthiest economies, according to the report. The latest Women Business and the Law report finds that women on average enjoy just 64% of the legal protections than men do, far fewer than the previous estimate of 77%. For the first time, Women Business and the Law assesses the gap between legal reforms and actual outcomes for women in 190 economies and says the gender gap is even wider in practice.
In talking policies, this special edition is looking at one of those very critical aspects that have to do with our everyday lives, of course, human development, the basic, that is food. Let's have that conversation. My My guest today is a chartered accountant, chartered tax compliance practitioner, governance, risk and compliance practitioner, a whole lot more. She's leading the CPP group of organizations, and of course, it includes Compliance Professionals PLC, Franklin Covey, Nigeria PLC, Restar Limited, Dagomo Foundation, and a whole lot more. Also, part of her CV is a former executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, and she is the first and the only woman to have held that position. And I'm glad to welcome you to this program. I'm speaking about Ms. Ifueko Omoigui Okauru. You're welcome. Nice to have you in our space.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And because we're celebrating women, I would like to get your experience, particularly you've been in the public space, you've been in the private space. How has it been for you navigating mostly terrains that typically you don't find women?
It's been a great experience. And again, when you ask a question, I'll frame it based on what I would like to have. I mean, so for some others, it may not be. But for me, I'm always seeking for challenges. I'm always seeking to solve problems. It's who I am. And so God knows I've had the challenges. And I think my fulfillment comes from surmounting that. So I'm blessed. I thank God for the experiences I've had. The big challenge I still have is Nigeria to be a much greater country. So that's always at the back of my mind. And everything I do is all around how can we make Nigeria better. We one way or the other. It could be at the micro level or macro level. It really doesn't matter. So that's very important to me. So that keeps me going, and that tells me that I still have what God wants me to do on this world, in this world.
Yeah, and now that you've mentioned Nigeria, we are at a point in our lives that for a lot of people, what they're going to eat, the basics of life, is what they have in mind. If you're going to give an assessment of the situation, what will it be?
For me, it's a deeply reflective moment. Reflection about how we could have avoided this and what we need to do to get out of it. And the actual status is, these are difficult times, extremely difficult times for a lot of people. We've come to a point where just eating, every day is difficult. And that usually used to be at least one thing you could guarantee. Some people may not have a house. Some people may not have clothes. Some people may not even be able to afford a car, but at least they could eat. So that one thing and one standard and basic need is actually now being severely challenged. That would be my assessment.
So, if we're going to tap into your expertise, how do we navigate out of the waters?
Let's put it this way. Where we are didn't start yesterday. Where we are has been basically, nudging us that it's going to happen. I remember in a building, and I was talking to a farmer. It's probably about 4 years ago. He had this large farm near Kaduna, and he was lamenting how he wasn't able to go back to the farm anymore because of the insecurity. And lamenting about money lost, crops burnt. People just come and burn everything. And you plant again, and born again. And then the indicators that we're likely to have food challenges were already in our face. So it didn't start today. Now, of course, the inflation, the removal of subsidies, some of the things, decisions that were taken for good intentions, but some of the decisions that were taken have exacerbated the situation. It's a lot worse, and perhaps earlier than one would even have thought. Now, in terms of the solution, I will hate to just talk about food, to be quite honest, because it's a combination of so many different things. For me, food represents a symbol of, or rather the lack of food, or food, represents a symbol of what we could be and what we should be. We have no business not having food to eat. We have land, we have weather. People on their own is something that people would do in their backyard. So why is it that we are where we are? So I'll look at it from a short-term, how to address the issue of food from a short-term, medium-term, long-term perspective, but also from a leadership perspective of what we should do to address what I would say systemic challenges that has brought us to where we are now. We depend on each other. We can't isolate food and not discuss education. We can't isolate education and not talk about health. We can't talk about food without talking about the processing and the fact that, yes, you have land, but are you adding value to it? We can't talk about food without looking at power. We can't talk about food without looking at security. And let me use my own personal example to explain what I mean. You'll see from my CV, I didn't grow up knowing how to farm, so I don't have that luxury. My mother loved farming. And I come from a whole line of farmers. But we were brought up to go to school, and in the school system, farming wasn't on the curriculum, it wasn't the syllabus. So farming is not something on my radar. But what is on my radar, like I've mentioned before, is how do we develop? So when this whole issue of food security and all these things started, I said, wait a minute, and the issue of unemployment, by the way, jobs, and the fact that agricultural space could be a good source of generating employment, I decided to now enter farming myself, not knowing much about it. And so I decided so I was looking for who to work with, to get somebody to work with on land. By the way, the land I wanted to work on, or I'm working on, my mother had told me this before. 1996, 1997. So that's like 20 years ago. Right? Am I correct?
Yeah. More than that.
More than that. 30 years ago. 30 years ago. That, I need to invest in, buying land in this community. I said, what am I doing with this land? I'm talking 30 years ago. Her father was also a big-time farmer. She said, no, that I'm going to find it useful and that I will use it to help the community. I just started my business then. And so I invested, in it. So it was this land I was now looking, let me start working with it. The first challenge I had with the land was the community. And what was the challenge? Not the level of, it was there, the land was there. And I kept on engaging with the king or the chief of the village at the time to just show that I was present. And then they were farming on it. When I now went to show that, I'm ready to now get into I didn't go into the details. And people heard, oh, so this is where her land is. The level of encroachment, before I could even think at the community level, was crazy. That got me into going to PP. The Edo State government had this PPC, which they put in place to avoid all this community those who were encroaching on lands. I'm still there, by the way. Then we said, okay, let's ring fence the one that they've not encroached on. And as we're in the committee, they are building more. So you are fighting that. I paid for the land. And I'm saying 30 years ago. So we said, okay, let's encroach it and let's even at least start farming. And everybody was, so getting the person to even work with, I had to start going to other states. I said, isn't there any place to go to stuff? Then because of distance and, skills, I'm in Abuja. I'm talking of land in Edo State. I had an infrastructure in Edo State I could take advantage of. Didn't work. Then one of the gentlemen I work with now said, oh, I know this gentleman who runs his father's farm. We were in school together. He read computer science. And the man listened. I said, no, this is the kind of person I want to work with. So I engaged him. And that's how our partnership started. So he was the one that was now planting crops, because the whole idea was you plant crops, and for me, you wanted to add value, put an infrastructure in place. So we're still at the planting crops level. A call, oh, your crops got bonds. Bonds? How? Till now, we don't know why. So we had to invest again in crops. Now, no, I'm not a farmer, so I'm leveraging on what he tells me. On not just what he tells me, but his experience, because he understands farming. December again, just before harvesting, like the whole idea was to start harvesting this period now. This time the fire was even worse. Again, what's the cause of the fire? I mean, there are so many different reasons, but sabotage wasn't ruled out. Sabotage wasn't ruled out. And then, and by the way, I was encouraged by this young man who had read, this is a farmer. This gentleman I'm talking to is a farmer. So he would leave me and the challenges I'm having with even wanting to farm to this young man who is working with his father. His father recently died. And they have invested. That is all he does. Again, he's dealing with the community. You are fighting here, you are fighting there. You are, and then before you know it, the community people say you need to pay. And the other day, I saw him looking a bit sad. We're having a meeting. And so I veered off the discussion to say, come, what's wrong? You know what he told me? He said, do you know the way I feel now? I said, how? He said, he's not against Japa. He was not a Japa person. And, but now he's beginning to ask himself, shouldn't he just leave the country? I think we are where we are, that we need to come together. For me, there's an immediate thing that we need. It's let's come together as a country. Set aside our differences. Whether it's Nigerians inside Nigeria, outside Nigeria, we have people who are stakeholders in Nigeria, they may not be Nigerians, inside Nigeria, outside Nigeria. And let's have a very clear, what I'll call an ideation, which is a solutions thing, but more importantly, beyond what we say we want to do, a very clear action plan. Another issue we're dealing with is, even if you are tried, people don't even believe.
The trust issue.
Major distrust. So in the immediate term is actions that will pull us together across party lines, across religion lines, across, not pointing fingers and just waiting. So some are doing, some of us are waiting, other people are waiting. Some want to do, but maybe you say something like, you're against me. No. Let's work in a survival mode, a crisis mode, where you don't, what we're focused on is, are you going to take me out of this mess? Yes, FX is an issue, but I've deliberately not talked about FX because FX is an output. FX is demand and supply. Are we treating this as a system where we look at each other and how they connect? And even if we are, is that how we are communicating it? Because I'm talking from the perspective of that person on the street who is hungry and asking himself, I need food. Are we also communicating that belief structure of everything happens overnight?
Wait for miracles.
There's no miracle.
How can we put them into actual use to meet these needs we're talking about?
One of the reasons I've stayed on in a sense, being a voice of those solutions, I'll just talk about one, and that is the concept of leadership. Because, we talk about leadership all the time. And when we discuss leadership, it's always about what are our presidents doing? What are our governors doing? What are the ministers doing? Isn't it? I want to change that paradigm. I do it at a company level, but I want to just use the opportunity to reflect on it at a country level. One of the principles or paradigms that drives the solution is the levels of leadership. There are levels. And leadership is not a position. Much as I will be the first also to tell you that the role of the president is extremely critical. But I'm discussing leadership now. And if you look at leadership as a concept, there are 4 levels. It starts with personal leadership, then interpersonal leadership, then managerial leadership, organizational leadership. Let me even now add a 5th level, country leadership. So it's a conundrum of so many different leaders playing together to drive a country where it should be. And we can't have that conversation without also holding family level, families responsible, how we train our children responsible, what happens in the school system, what happens in the media. Not us folding hands and hoping that that miracle is going to happen sometime.
Okay, before I let you go, just one last line. What will be your message for particularly the young child who is drawing inspirations from you?
See yourself as a child that will grow to an adult. Be clear about where you want to be. But beyond being clear, recognize that you as a person have the ability to be who you want to be. Everything else starts from that. Stay focused on that goal and build a network and a support system around you to help you along that path.
Sincerely, thank you for making time for this conversation and happy International Women's Day.
You're very welcome, and happy International Women's Day.
All right, we're going to move straight to our education segment, Simplify Days. Recently, the Central Bank of Nigeria embarked on open market operations, OMO. Let's simplify that for you, and from there we go to the markets. For more on market rates across the country, do well to log on to our sister website www.marketnigeriatv.com. We have all the details for you there. Saban Media Services is pleased to always receive your feedback. So do well to send in your questions, comments, and suggestions because we value them. Until we come your way again, same time, same channel next week, be safe out there. And don't forget, the duty of building a positive Nigeria rests on each and every shoulder of the Nigerian citizen. Have a beautiful weekend and God bless Nigeria. And of course, happy International Women's Day.